Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
I love America. I love the Constitution. I love the First Amendment. I want to carry enormous guns. I love property. And let me tell you something. If you care about your country, read Ludwig von Mises and the 6 lessons of the Austrian Economic School, motherfuckers.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white,
I have had the pleasure of interviewing our next guest before. And at that time, it was about her previous book, Americans Anonymous, Restoring Power to the People, One Citizen at a Time. She is host of the enormously popular Mel K Show. Did you have to put enormously? It's very emasculating. You can find it at the melkshow.com. The new book, Infiltration Instead of Invasion, America's Betrayal, 1944 to 54. I love this because we're going to talk about a lot of scandal that is the underbelly of what we now face today. Mel K, how are you?
I'm great. Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a very interesting, right? You started off in, are you from New York?
Yeah.
Yeah, from New York. Then you go to Hollywood for 20 years, right? Film,
yep.
Producer.
Yeah,
and now,
everything. Yep.
Now you're in the best state in the world, if memory serves me correct.
Yes,
right?
I am. I live in Florida, thank God.
Yes, very good, very good, very good. So it's interesting perspective because you've seen all aspects of exactly what our problem is. We have, in fact, been infiltrated. This is an underbelly of a Leviathan that has us 8 ways to Tuesday. Heads they win, tails we lose. And it starts out, really, is it before World War II? Because I kind of think it was with the Rockefeller Foundation and all of that scandal. And then the Bank of International Settlements and all of that and the Federal Reserve. But what is the crucial part of 44 to 54?
Well, essentially, what we're dealing with, yes, you're right. It happened. The first betrayal of America was under the, I believe, treasonous Wilson administration. And Wilson didn't only bring in the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal nor a reserve, and also the IRS. But he also brought in progressivism, which essentially they've been selling us for decades, the decline of America as progress. So you are correct. It happened earlier. But what happened in those 10 years is essentially a global supranational financial architecture and an intelligence architecture was built above all nations by the international, what I call the international banking cartel, and the global public-private partnership, which of course includes NGOs like the Rockefeller Foundation. But what really happened then is that a group of bankers, essentially, actually Wall Street lawyers, the Dulles brothers, spent World War II essentially in Switzerland. And we were all told Switzerland was neutral and, Switzerland was great. Switzerland was not neutral. Switzerland was keeping the banking money from the Nazi side and the Ally side going. They were all sitting at the same table. And essentially what happened is they built a continuity of government above all nations that not only included, like you said, the Bank of International Settlements, which should have disappeared at Bretton Woods and never did, but they created the IMF, the World Bank at Bretton Woods, and then they created the United Nations and 76 essentially tentacles, and they gave them all immunity. And from that point on, really, no nation has been totally sovereign. And then, of course, the two men that created that for the global government, they walked into the two highest positions unelected in the United States, the Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, and the head of the CIA, Alan Dulles. And I think from that point on, the State Department, the CIA, later the USAID, National Endowment for Democracy, has been a node of this supranational global government. While all of us believe that they were working for us, I don't think they have been. And I think the controlled demolition of America kicked off in 1953 when those two men took over the country.
And now, how many people did not know that CIA Dulles' brother was in charge of this? I mean, that's not something that people discuss. And when you look at this underbelly of relationships, how do you not? I mean, I'm assuming you stumbled onto Prescott Bush and his relationship with the Third Reich. That is a staggering. I mean, he was the banker of the Third fracking Reich. He paid the largest fine that our government had ever given anybody, and he wrote a check for it, and then was elected senator. So this isn't the only time Americans have been stupid voting for traitors, right?
No, I mean, we've been stupid voting for traitors. America voted for a Manchurian candidate. I mean, Barack Obama was born into the USAID CIA world. So, I mean, we were lied to about his entire past, but this really started decades ago. And the whole point was to collapse America from within, because I really believe that the issue at this point, I've covered the World Economic Forum and Davos and Bilderberg and the UN and all the tentacles. This is about the constitutional republic being unacceptable to the global elite. They cannot have this rogue America that actually believes that individual liberty and rights from God, not government, this doesn't work for their end game. So, I mean, honestly, the 10 years I'm talking about, so many things happened to undermine the sovereignty and also the financial future of the United States that people don't know. They hear about Bretton Woods. They don't know Bretton Woods was a week after D-Day. Hitler hadn't surrendered, and the international bankers are planning a supranational banking system that then they give themselves, of course, the Dulles brothers are Wall Street lawyers that created this. They give themselves immunity. To this day, the IMF, the World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, they all have total immunity.
Think about
insanity.
It's a country that never has to turn over anything. The Bank of International Settlements is an amazing legal vestibule of unlimited corruption. And they give us the illusion of Bretton Woods. The Americans were the superpower. And what we really are the financiers of all the world fraud. And you know, it's fascinating when you dig into the money of things. I was looking at all of the money of stuff when it came to Iran. First of all, this is all part of World War II. Iran, it was the ally of the Third Reich. So people forget all this and all of what we are living today of how long we've been at conflict with the Islamo-Nazi, which is why it's very important that's how they should be referred to. The land of the Aryan, which I still love when Democrats repeat it, don't know what the hell they're saying. But when you look at the rial, the Iranian currency, what's fascinating is before Jimmy Carter, whose consultant at the CIA was George Bush Sr., who was the son of Prescott Bush. And you look at what they installed the theocracy. But first, you have to realize what Iran was doing. They were succeeding. And their rial, it was 64 rials to $1. Today, it's 1.83 million. So you look at what they did. They sidelined that. They sidelined the Middle East. And they take our money in the banking system, the cartel, and they're just bribing allies. We don't have any fracking allies. That's the beauty of Trump. He's exposing it. From South Korea to Spain to Central and South America. We have no allies. We're just laundering the fracking money, and we're paying for it in a grand scheme nobody can audit. How do you see it?
Right. That's exactly how I see it. And what you're saying is even more. So the reason I tie it to that decade is because of the Dulles brothers, bankers from Wall Street, Sullivan and Cromwell, in Nazi Germany, in Switzerland, but dealing with Nazi Germany regularly as if the banking system could not collapse. So people have to understand the whole idea of Switzerland being neutral. No. What was going on in Switzerland was that money was being looted and laundered and stolen from places like Czechoslovakia and France, and it was being deposited in the Bank of International Settlements. Okay? And they're sitting around the table, all the City of London bankers and the Five Eyes bankers and they're sitting around the table talking about future finance while they are in Switzerland overlooking people dying in the worst part of the war post D-Day in the windows as if it's not happening. And, people have to understand a lot of this is multinational corporations as well. So people look at the World Economic Forum. What's that about? What it's about is borderless business. It's about no nation states. It's about a global governance model that they've been trying for, like you said. Remember Smedley Butler after World War I
Sure.
came out and said all wars are a racket. These are bankers' wars. Well, I think after World War I, the international banking and global public-private partnership, as I call them, they realized that the best way to consolidate power and to suck out all the money of the free nations was reconstruction after war.
Oh, the
so
greatest
essentially
scam
what
ever.
happened, the Bank of International Settlements ostensibly was created out of the Young and Dawes Plan after World War I for reparations from Germany. Meanwhile, Sullivan and Cromwell is representing the Rockefellers at Standard Oil of New Jersey, and IG Farben, which is the biggest corporation in Germany. And then they go together and they're sharing patents back and forth, and they're working with the Bank of Internet. Essentially, we refunded Nazi Germany's industrial power, and a lot of that came from America. And then the biggest fraud was the Marshall Plan. After World War II, the same exact thing happened. So now the American people, and I believe this was set up at Bretton Woods, and the whole idea of the U.S. being the reserve currency and all of that has been a total fraud on the American people. We have been lied to and looted equally. There's no race or religion that wasn't touched by this operation. And then when you look at that, John Foster Dulles also wrote the original United Nations treaty in a group at the same time. And then Alan Dulles goes into the CIA, and they are lawyers from Sullivan and Cromwell. What's the first regime change operation of now, I'd say 90, including the United States since 2016, was Iran.
Mm-hmm.
So their client at Sullivan and Cromwell was BP Oil. Well, Iran in 1953 wanted to nationalize oil and have their own currency and all that. Well, that was unacceptable. So next thing you know, we're freeing Iran in 1953, and nobody's telling anyone that BP is the client of the law firm of the Secretary of State and CIA head. And then the same thing happened in Guatemala. A year later, the CIA essentially overthrows Guatemala, and then we find out that not only is United Fruit a client of Sullivan and Cromwell, but Alan Dulles is on the board. And I really think that essentially they took the model from Nazi Germany, they moved it into the State Department, and I, at this point, think the CIA was never created to protect the United States, nor do I think the Five Eyes arrangement had anything to do with protecting their nations. This is a protection racket for the international, supranational architecture of finance.
So now what you're really writing is a volume encyclopedia, because you're only covering 10 years, but you're going to go with the rest of it. I could tell. This is what you're doing, right? You're going to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to do 10 years, because this is when it really gets interesting, right? Because it gets interesting because these are all the same players and their kids, from the Bushes to the relationship with, they don't exist. Dulles, all of it. Right. It's absolutely brilliant. I love this, what you're doing. And, part of the thing that's important for people to understand is before World War II, the relationship between these players and the Third Reich, and what the Third Reich represented. People don't talk about how many times Hitler was on, what was it, Time Magazine, right? Wasn't he on there 5 times, 6 times? Right. Time Magazine. And why?
No. The Dulleses were friends with the Third Reich.
Yeah.
This is the problem. What was going on in Switzerland, they were not at war when they crossed into the Bank of International Settlements. They were all working out a global governance model that was run by, it was the end of, they were capturing the financial model of the entire world while people are dying on the battlefield to protect Europe. I mean, it's just so, and it became the model. The model is endless war for profit. And 3 presidents warned us about this within 3 years. People can look up the dates. It's in my book. But my book is based on JFK's 1961 speech to the press. So if anyone didn't know that the press has always been against the president, is insane. But what does he say? He says we have a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy, infiltration instead of invasion, subversion instead of elections, intimidation instead of free choice, and guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. 1961. He's killed shortly after. Then Eisenhower comes out and says, beware of the international banks and the military-industrial complex on his way out. Then Truman, right before he dies, writes an op-ed in the Washington Post saying he would never have signed the 1947 National Security Act that created the CIA and NSA and everything if he had known what they would have become, that they were sinister and that they were undermining the foreign policy of the United States. 3 men in 3 years.
And you look
one
at these,
died for it.
and you look at the angst that the Leviathan has for Trump, and it's really you're explaining all of it because it's been this illusion.
It's all about that.
It's an illusion of our republic. It's been this way since World War II. Nobody gets in that nobody wanted to get in, except for right now. It's the first time in history that this has happened. And what I love, too, is the connection of all these players and how they're positioned in our American parties. And when you look at Newsom and you look at Pelosi, most people are unaware of the connection between Getty. Also, right? They're all Getty.
I know.
That's Getty's whole clan. And look at what they did with California in the midst of all of this angst with Iran. There is still a regulation that California oil must include 4% of Iranian oil, aside from all our own foreign policy. So really, this is the game. It's between the two families of the worldwide syndicate, isn't it?
Well, it's something else also that we need to understand is progressivism. It's a fraud. First of all, it's European socialism. Second of all, the caricature of the Nazis is not an accident. The Nazis are the National Socialist Workers' Party, and they still exist. And one of the big reasons that they got all the money out in the CIA D-class of the Red House Papers was because they would rise again. Well, I believe the war that's going on right now, that we should have pulled out of NATO long ago. This is a boondoggle for America in Europe again.
Oh,
but
please.
The truth is, they set up Ukraine in the 90s for the Third World War that they want right now. And the entire what happened to Donald Trump in 2016 was because he was going to normalize relations with Russia and find out what was going on in Ukraine, and they were not going to let that happen. And again, the CIA, I don't think, ever worked for us. And don't forget, within weeks of Trump winning, 100 former CIA guys, all of them that did overthrows in Europe and South America, wrote a letter to General Flynn saying that Donald Trump could not be president. He was an existential threat. General Flynn threw it away, and next thing you know, they go after Flynn. Then McMaster got it, ignored it. I fully believe all roads of what we're dealing with lead exactly back to the thing that the Dulles brothers built, which is a supranational node that's acting like the fourth branch of government, and everyone is scared of them.
I have to say, I love the fact that you take this on, and I love the fact that this is going to be volumes, because this story really needs to be told, and it needs to be told with this kind of format where you're taking people down the path of where we are today and how much of it circles back to this agreement, this Leviathan of shadows, which is really what we've been dealing with. And this is crucially important for people to understand. It's an illusion that we have this republic, and the angst against Trump isn't because any other reason than he is disrupting it. And when you look back at this whole thing with Victoria Nuland and Obama, you know what fascinates me? You know what fascinates me, Mel? The whole stronghold of the Third Reich was Ukraine and the Azov Nazis.
I know.
To this day,
nobody knows.
They celebrate Stefan Bandera. Are you out of your fracking mind? Aside from the head of the Iron Curtain, what of them? 4 of them are Ukrainians, the worst that wanted to blow up America. We are on the dead wrong side. I never bought this war, and I'm glad you're at least enlightening people.
No, 1,000%. But even worse, Alan Dulles made sure none of the Ukrainian Nazis were held accountable at Nuremberg. Figure that out. And then you have to understand, George Soros is part of this group. I would say he's a front man for the Rockefellers. If anything, he collapsed the Bank of England. But what I want people to understand is that we are under attack, not by, like, this whole thing with the DSA and the jihadis getting together. They're both, the big thing we have to understand about Nazism is it's totalitarian. We are a constitutional republic. That is the thorn in the paw of the globalists. They need to end the constitutional republic. There cannot be individual liberty. There cannot be rules from God, not government. That will not work with Agenda 2030. And I believe the long-term goal, if you look at George Soros' actions from the 90s forward, he essentially was very involved in the overthrow of the duly elected president of Ukraine in 2014, who wanted to normalize relations with Russia. But the plan with Brzezinski and Kissinger and Rockefeller and all of the people that really run this, the goal of the Third Reich was to collapse Russia, turn it into a bunch of different pieces, have a united Europe, take all their natural resources and run the world through Geneva and Brussels. That is still the goal.
Sure it is. And I love the fact he was a Nazi. He worked with the Nazis at 14. I don't even want to tell you what I was doing to Carol Belpedio's bra at 14 years old, let alone what this guy was doing with the Nazis. It's preposterous what is happening here. Absolutely preposterous.
Best time of his life. And the worst part is, here's the thing. He wrote a document. George Soros, it's still on Open Society website. He wrote a document in 1993, and it said the NATO World Order. And I believe he was 100% responsible with Bush of getting Clinton into that position, because Clinton had all kinds of problems with the CIA in Arkansas, MENA, all that stuff.
It all went away, though.
And frankly, yeah. But frankly, George Soros wrote the foreign policy for Clinton. And what's the worst part of this is George Soros essentially took over Ukraine before the USSR collapsed.
Yeah.
He's all in with because Ukraine, since the collapse of the USSR, has never been a democracy. What are we defending there? No. Ukraine has been a oligarchy of one foot in Russia and one foot in Ukraine with Soros and all these international companies. We are not fighting a war to protect a democracy. We are fighting a war to protect a kleptocracy.
Absolutely.
It's insane.
Yes. Mel K, I love the fact that you joined me. By the way, did you see the 1998 George Soros 60 Minutes thing? Did you see it?
Oh, yeah, of course. Everyone can see it. Everyone can see it twice. And when he admits that he was in Ukraine.
Before the fall. I love that whole thing.
Yes.
Mel K, you can find her at themelkshow.com. The show is fantastic. The books are great. The latest book, Infiltration Instead of Invasion, America Betrayed, 1944 to 54. I'm already excited about 1954 to 64. I can't wait for the encyclopedia version.
Conversion instead of elections is 64 to 74. Wait till you read that one.
I so appreciate you giving me a shot for the interview. Thank you for taking time. I know how busy you are. Thank you.
No, anytime. Thank you.
We'll be back with your calls and comments.
Broadcasting from the petri dish of corruption known as the state of Illinois.
In the upper Midwest, the nation, and around the world.
This is the Shaun Thompson Show on AM 560. The Answer.
Did you know a will alone does not keep your family out of court?